Hey everybody, sorry for this little awkward disclaimer at the start of the video, but we just wanted to let you know that this discussion was recorded several weeks back, which of course was before the news came forward about Kevin Spacey's sexual harassment. Just a few hours before me recording this, another victim has actually stepped forward, and despite the fact that in this video, you'll hear both Peter and I praise Spacey's voice performance as Hopper, and even went as far as to say, oh, it's a shame that Pixar probably won't use Kevin Spacey again in the future. We, of course, find his abusive actions shocking and unacceptable, and his thin attempt to distract the public from his wrongdoing to be harmful and ridiculous. And we hope to see the industry agree that this is unforgivable behavior, not just with the words of some of the people from within it, but through the future actions of the studios. And with that said, please enjoy the rest of the video.
Hey everybody, my name is Peter Mancuso.
I'm Brian Koch.
And this is their next installment of our Pixar Watch, where we're going to watch every single Pixar movie leading up to the release of Pixar's Coco in November.
The 19th film.
Then their 19th film, and discuss every single one. Last time we talked about Toy Story.
Yes.
And now we've moved on to Pixar's second theatrical release, which is, Brian, what is it called?
The Bug's Life.
It's The Bug's Life.
Yes.
Not just any Bug's Life will do.
It has to be the one.
It has to be the Bug's Life.
Correct.
Now, so here's the interesting thing about this. Is that, apart from little snippets, I have never actually seen this film. So this was actually the first time that I had seen The Bug's Life.
Because you're what? In the industry, we call you a poser.
A poser is the word that people would use.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my very first time. So, Brian, I'm curious, like, for you,
Yes.
I'm curious rewatching this, because I know we've seen Toy Story so many times.
Of course.
But Bug's Life, I can't imagine you watched. Like, when's the last time you watched this movie?
I did watch it, like, maybe about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how's this stack up?
But since then, it had been a while before that time.
Okay.
But in terms of that, I mean, like, you know, it's always nice to revisit it because it is more fresh upon rewatch than some of the other ones, which I watched, like, ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Because this one, like, I didn't, like, get the DVD as early as the other ones and stuff, but, like, I still, you know, it's a familiar story, but, of course, it doesn't, it didn't get as much play as some of the other ones, which is something I think we should definitely talk about.
Yeah.
Because A Bug's Life, out of, like, especially kind of the original run that Pixar gave us, is, like, sort of the odd man out.
Yeah, and it's really weird, you know, because there are movies that are hated more, you know, that people think are worse, yet this one kind of no one talks about. Like,
Just
people,
slipped under the radar.
People talk about how much they dislike Cars. People talk about how much they dislike Brave, but no one talks about how much they dislike or like or whatever. No one talks about this movie.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just, there's a bunch of different reasons, but I guess you could sort of just trace it all back to they're fresh off of Toy Story, right? And there's so much riding on, okay, well, we have to, you know, they're like a lot of people infamous for just being one-hit wonders, right? So this has to just sort of be like, okay, there's not necessarily as much room to experiment and really then kind of go crazy with it. It's just like, okay, let's look at then, like, what made Toy Story work, the sort of the bright, colorful characters, like a wealth of supporting characters, especially.
Yeah.
And just kind of, like, lean into then all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot, like, similar. We get Randy Newman again. We have John Lasseter directing again. We have all the... And they even, like... It was funny rewatching it. Early in the film, they, like, Flick has succeeded in one thing, and he goes, oh, great, one success. Which is just like Pixar. Because they've only had one success up until this point.
Oh, that's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's a bunch of other reasons that we could get into. But let's... Hear it from me, because this is your first time.
This is my first time.
Your first time.
Really, I want to clarify. I've seen, like, I think I watched it maybe once or twice, like, in the background, like, just something else, like, when I was a kid, maybe, because ABC Family would play the Pixar movies, like, ad nauseum.
Right.
And I would, oftentimes, movies I had seen or not seen, I would just put it on the background. But yeah, so this is, like, the first time I ever really
So, with it being your first time, then what was then sort of your impression of it overall?
Better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay, good.
But totally understand why no one talks about it.
Uh-huh.
For me, it was kind of, like, I don't want to say forgettable, but the thing we mentioned is, so this movie clocks in maybe at 95 minutes,
Yes.
I think.
Something
so, like 15 minutes or so more than Toy Story, the original Toy Story.
Yeah.
Yet, the original Toy Story feels much longer. And we talked about this in the last... And more happens. We talked about in the last episode that in the original Toy Story, so much happens. The pacing it's so well paced at such a breakneck speed. This is very... maybe lackadaisical is the word. I'm not really sure. Something I mentioned to you during it when they come back with the circus
to Ant Island.
Back to Ant Island,
yes.
I was like, wait, is the movie like almost over or something? Because I was expecting it to be like this big epic journey, you know, because it's kind of like, okay, we proved ourselves with Toy Story, let's see how far we can stretch it. Right. And they get back there so quickly, and not really much, if you really think about it, like if you were to do like a beat sheet for this movie versus Toy Story, like a lot less happens. And I think that's why people don't talk about it, and also unfortunately, you know, I really don't think that this movie would get as much maybe shit as it gets, but it's sandwiched in between two Toy Stories, which are both like masterpieces, like you know. So it's not set up for success. So I want to ask you what did people think of it when it came out? Because this comes out a year before Toy Story 2, so it's not like they came out right at the same time. There was a year buffer where this was like the most recent Pixar movie.
Well, people did really like it, and it was a success. It did make more money than Ants, which we should address the elephant in the room. Ants. DreamWorks Ants, which, of course, then there's the whole big brouhaha of then Jeffrey Katzenberg leaves, and then Pixar and DreamWorks people, they talk about then what they're working on, and some people say that then Katzenberg made a pitch like years before that related to like bugs or something. So then it's just, who had the idea first? What happened? Da-da-da. But, you know, it's like at a certain point, you just have to let the films and the productions speak for themselves, and how Ants wasn't supposed to come first, but then they rushed it along into production so it could come first, and then there was this whole thing of like, okay, we're moving around release dates, because like Disney was like, oh, we're going to open it like the same weekend as The Prince of Egypt, and Prince of Egypt was originally going to be the first DreamWorks animated film, but then Ants became it, because they just wanted to push it right before A Bug's Life.
Yeah.
And so they did, and you can tell. Because I just rewatched that movie this summer. And it was very... Ants, yes. Ants, 1998. The second computer animated film ever made.
Which is... It does not deserve that moniker.
It's sad. Like, it's honestly sad. And what's even sadder is that there are a lot of people who will say, oh, but Ants is the more sophisticated film. No. I'm shutting all those people down right now. Because it's not. It frustrates me just how much... Oh, because it's appealing to adults. As Woody Allen. No, like, listen. It's not like... It's maybe not like as bad as you might fear it is, but like it also just there's nothing in it for kids whatsoever. In fact, it's like horrifying and grotesque for children. There's some like really violent imagery. It's like beheadings and like characters squashed and such. But like also just like watching it as an adult, it feels like so just like none of the characters are then very likable. It purports this sort of like capitalistic subtext and like we're like defying the man, and like even though it like purports to be more like intellectual than A Bug's Life, it just comes across as very muddled, because by the end of it they then sort of like posit this idea of like an ant utopia that they're going to go into instead of having this colony. But by the end they just kind of revert to the same thing once they take out the kernel, as it were. So it doesn't really commit to, whereas A Bug's Life, it's very clear as day, but it does have a commentary about like how even though it might seem as though there's superior like species, they recognize how like the ants, that great scene of I think it's probably the best scene in the movie when we go back to Hopper and he's talking about like just a little.
Oh yeah, that probably is.
Yeah, and like how like if
that's
like,
the most
all
interesting
of them come
scene.
together, like and he knows it. It's not that he's so conceited that he's like, oh yeah, well we could take them all down. He's like, no, if they figure it out, then they'll take us down, which is really interesting. And I think that's a much more like potent, like sort of an idea to sort of build the movie around than anything that's in Ants. Like it feels much fuller and more completely explored. And I really like this idea of then, because like what the Queen accuses Flick of is putting himself before the colony, where what it really is then it's not a different. It's not putting yourself before everyone else. It's just a matter of individualizing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like all the parts functioning as one, being greater as a whole.
Yeah. Now, mentioning that scene, which is probably the best scene in the movie,
I think
with
so.
Hopper when he's explaining.
Kevin Spacey's great.
Kevin Spacey's performance is really good. That scene, how strong that scene is, reveals, I think, the movie's biggest weakness, is that there's not a lot to grab onto, I think.
Yes.
And I think Pixar's weakest films. And here's the thing: is so I haven't seen them all. For those of you out there, I have not seen them all. And the ones I haven't seen are probably the ones like people consider are the worst. But that being said, like even the Pixar's weakest films are still pretty good. They're just not as strong.
Yeah.
I think the reason why this movie is considered one of the weaker ones is because there's not much to sink your teeth into. The same way, kind of like in Cars, like there's not a lot to sink your teeth into. There's some thematic elements here, but that scene is like where things actually become like a little more high concept. And the rest of the movie is kind of like, we can work together to defeat them.
Right.
Okay. Which is fine, perfectly fine. And also you have to understand for 1998, like, this is, like, as good as any other, animated thing. And the only people that outdo this were Pixar themselves, so you can't really, you have to take the movie on its own terms.
Correct.
And, like, the time period it was released. But, I think that's where I don't want to say fails, but it doesn't grab people, and that's why people don't remember it.
I think the best Pixar films are also, they're very character centric, whereas Flick, and like the best scene in the movie doesn't even have Flick in it. Think about that.
Yeah.
And like it's willing to devote a lot of time to, okay, we're going to introduce these circus bug characters, and we like all of them, but like also the movie, like we were mentioning before about how it really then sort of, okay, let's throw to these supporting characters. There are a lot of supporting characters.
There's almost like too many,
and there are none that like I single out going like, oh, I don't like that one. But it's just there's so many.
Because in Toy Story,
yes,
there's a lot of toys, but if you really think about the supporting toys in Andy's room, you have Mr. Potato Head, Ham, Rex, Slinky, and Bo Peep.
Right.
That's 5. And they really don't have a huge role. Like, they're not present in the movie that much. Right. We're only really going to them as, like, cutaways.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it's like you have Flick, and then you have all of the circus bugs. I think there's, like, 7 of them, 8 of them,
and you forget about
the leader,
like Manny and Gypsy, I don't
even know. I don't even know who those are. I don't even know which. Oh wait, is Manny the praying mantis? Yes. And then Gypsy's the. Oh, okay.
Yes.
But so
and I like them, and then I remember watching the movie. Oh, I like these characters, but there's just there are a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing is that we notice how in all the other kind of then early Pixar films, where the stakes sort of derive from are the intersection with the human world. As what you see that,
yeah, because like
you see that in Toy Story, you see that in Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo. Of course, that incites the plot. Nemo's taken away
by a human.
Correct. And then, but at this, there's nothing relating to the human world. The closest you get is there's while Flick is going through sort of to try to find the warriors. There's this one insect who has the sign of the kid pulled my wings off.
Yeah.
There's no other reference to humanity whatsoever. So not to say you necessarily need it, but I think it is definitely an interesting.
It's interesting how
difference.
How in that difference kind of
because you said, like, no pun intended, it felt like a smaller story. You did point that out as you were.
Yeah, it just feels like it lacks something. It feels a little uneven. I feel like we should have spent, like, I was really looking forward to seeing like this sprawling adventure.
Yes.
Like it's like, here's Toy Story, like let's take what we learned from Toy Story and kind of apply it to a bigger thing. And I will say visually it is interesting.
Visually compared to Ants, oh good God. Ants looks, I'm sorry if you worked on Ants. But because it's not your fault, because it was a very rushed production, but it looks like garbage compared to this.
For this movie, I love that. A big, really interesting thing, because in this series, we really want to try to tackle all the aspects of the movies and seeing how they evolve with each film. And something that, I noticed is the use of depth of field.
Oh, yes.
And for those of you maybe who don't know exactly what I mean by that, the depth of field, like if you're looking at an image and like the background might be out of focus, and so a shallow depth of field is when the background's really out of focus, and a deep depth of field is when you can see everything very clearly. This movie has a lot of shallow depth of field, which is important because then you start to see the transition of like it's not just a computer-aided film. We want to try to mimic what it would be like to actually film this. And you see this a lot now in Pixar. This is a very common.
So we're getting more of, and we talked about this a little last time, the style differentiation between hand-drawn and CG, and sort of getting scale across a lot better.
The scale in this is really good. Yeah,
terrain is really
with Toy Story, I was like, I don't know how much you get from it being CG, but this I can totally see, because scale is so important in terms of the character relationships. Scale is important in Toy Story because like they're toys,
right?
But scale in the sense of the way the characters
it's
crucial to establish the conflict between the grasshoppers and the ants.
Yeah. Which, another thing with the narrative that I think was interesting, like, you were then kind of, like, going, like, oh, like, while this was happening was, there's, like, this sort of, like, I hesitate to call it an arc, but with Dot, that then she's not able to fly, we're then told this earlier, and then she just kind of does near the end, and we're like, oh, it's an arc. So, because there's just so much going on, and what was interesting was, I was looking at kind of the original, like, first draft, and sort of, like, I guess, like, the biggest thing that, like, Dot does in the whole film is when she goes back to sort of convince Flick to return, and it's worth fighting for, and she gives him back the pretended to seed sort of thing. But in the original version, like, Princess Ada just does that.
Like, Dot doesn't exist.
They just, so they just, like, merged those two characters together. But, didn't merge them because I guess Dot came after. But, yeah, so then it's just like, do we really even need Dot? It's so... There's a lot of characters.
And that goes back to the fact that there are so many characters, and it has so much respect for the characters because they're so well performed,
right?
And like the animation's good, and they're really cool designs. So like, understandably, like I think the creators have a little too much respect for the characters.
Yes.
So then it's like, okay, well we have Flick's arc, and then we have Dot's arc, and also Ada's arc, and like the Ladybug's arc.
It all needs to be in
Hopper's
service
arc.
of your main character's journey.
Yeah. And
they talk about this themselves with a lot of their films. Because, like, especially when you look at something like Toy Story 3, you're dealing with then so many iconic characters, but then it has to then be very clear. You sort of have to then assemble all of them into, like a group, and then they all function like this. They all kind of then think similarly, and then, like, Woody then sort of has his own, then, like direction and such that's then driving the story forward. But, yeah, when you get, like, sort of then this, then there's also then the whole thread of then you have the ladybug and the feminine side, Francis, then, like, you know, exploring that. Like that's like another tangent.
That's like a gag that they try to turn into an arc. Uh-huh. Like I feel like that's just like a one gag in like the opening scene when we first meet him, but they try to extend that like this is like a big issue for him, and then he has to deal with like I don't really care. Like I don't really care about the ladybug learning to like be more feminine. Like great, I mean very progressive for 1998.
Sure, great,
but like I really don't care.
Yeah, because the supporting characters in Toy Story like. None of them really have arcs outside of like, well, Woody, you're a murderer. Oh wait, he's not a murderer.
Yeah, and that's not really an arc. That's more just like they were misinformed, and then they realized that they weren't that they were wrong. Yes. But let's talk about the characters. With starting with this by saying that we liked it. Yeah, we've been talking a lot of like what we don't like about it.
No, I really like the film.
Let's talk about the characters. So like Flick, he's a really cool, I think. Mm-hmm. Character. He's not. I don't think he's nearly as compelling as Woody.
I've been told out of all Pixar characters, I'm most like Flick.
You are?
Yeah. Well, I've been told.
Okay. I don't know. I have to see this movie again. I don't know. I mean, you do look like an ant.
Oh well.
Because you are an inch tall.
Okay.
For those of you who've never seen Brian, he actually is. He looks quite like. Are you an ant?
Well, maybe.
but anyway, yeah. I don't know how like. It's hard to relate to him sometimes because his voice actor, who's his name, Dave Foley, is a little too smart alecky.
But you think so? I think there's a sincerity to
No, I don't mean that he's so smart alecky I can't take him seriously, but his performance is very smart alecky, but the way it's written is very like, I'm pathetic, but like I have a heart of gold, so like me. And those, I don't know if those always gel.
Okay.
You know, so he's kind of like I've never been a fan of stories where it's like I want... Not that I'm, like, offended, like, oh, this is a bad message for kids. But I'm not really into the whole plot device of them sending him off because they don't want him there. And then he's too stupid to realize that. Yeah. Like, I'm not a fan of that. It's just kind of...
He's a bit too hapless compared to some of our other Pixar.
Like, he doesn't have... I wish he were a little more self-aware.
I was just going to say...
And more like, I know people don't like me.
Yeah.
I wish it was more like, I know people don't like me, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yes. It might have been nice if he had some less confidence to him.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Because it's good humor when he walks down, everyone cheers, and he thinks he's cheering for him, but they're cheering that he's leaving.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good gag, but, like, I think, like, that speaks to this kind of bigger problem where it's kind of, I wish he had he's a little more relatable. Because right now he's kind of a caricature of, like, haha, I'm so great, and, like...
And since you bring up this idea of relatability, and you have, like, all these, like, really then sort of just, like, primal concepts of, oh, what do your toys do? When you go out of the room, or the monsters, why do they try to scare you when they come out of the closet?
These really high concept existential
A Bug's Life is, well, there are these ants, and then there are circus bugs, and they help them fight, and
maybe that's the issue, is I think even normal people who maybe aren't as, like, nerdy about this as we are, like, I think deep, like, subconsciously, what they're craving, that other Pixar movies give them that Bugs Life doesn't, is, like, these existential issues in such a digestible form.
Right.
You feel kind of like you're solving these existential crises, even though you're not really, like...
And that's what the Hopper scene gives you. And that's why it's the best scene.
Because even though you literally aren't, like, a toy in real life...
Yeah.
For some reason, those existential questions somehow, like, affect us.
Right.
Like, like discussing and, like, exploring those concepts really... hit us for some reason. That's why people love Toy Story, and that's why people love Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, etc. And this doesn't... It's more just kind of a story.
Yes.
Which is fine. And that's kind of the movie. It's fine. I wouldn't say there's anything... Especially now.
Yes.
Like, nearly 20 years later, there's really nothing remarkable about it. There's nothing like... It's good, but it's not remarkably good. It's funny, but it's not remarkably funny, in the way that the other films... were or are,
which again, I wish it wasn't a knock against it, but it's because it's like among these titans,
and that's a big thing. It's like if you like have 5 brothers and they were all like Olympic gold medal swimmers, and you're like pretty good at math, like not great, but like you're pretty good.
It's a bit of a cliche thing to say, but if it was from like any other studio, everyone would be like, "Oh my god, it's so good."
Yeah, oh totally. Yeah. And it's definitely like it gets a undeservedly bad rap.
Yes.
But I don't. But here's the thing. Unlike
understandable.
Unlike some like the Disney movies where it's like this is the best Disney movie ever, and it's like underrated. I don't think anyone tries to say this is the best Pixar movie. No. Like I don't think there's like that small fan base that thinks this. There's people who really like it more than others, but I don't think there's anyone. The way like people will be like Hunchback of Notre Dame is definitively the greatest Disney movie. Right. Like I don't think anyone's saying like Bug's Life
because it doesn't push itself
Pixar
like so far in like a direction away from the other ones that would really then kind of distinguish it. Because I feel like I'll see more people who are like, "Oh, Cars is my favorite," than A Bug's Life, even.
Which I can bet because it's stronger choices elicit stronger responses in either direction. Right. I mean, and I don't know too much about the history, so maybe you want to fill me in on this. But like, this feels. I mean, I'm trying to watch these movies. Like, hopefully, we're watching these movies in a vacuum, as if like we hadn't seen any of the movies that come out after.
Yeah.
But compared to Toy Story, this feels a little safer. And I don't know if that was actually the sentiment or society's kind of reaction to it. Like I don't know.
I mean, like I kind of said that just because it would like make sense for it to be like they never give off that vibe like when they're talking about the film, but just in general, I mean, people did respond to it well. It did very well at the box office,
but it pushed a lot of, I think, boundaries, like in terms of the scale and the scope,
yes,
and the vistas. Did we talk about the vistas? The vistas are really good. I think that it did a lot.
In-camera tricks.
The in-camera tricks. The only thing is that it's immediately everything that this movie did to advance computer generated animation, Toy Story 2 did the next year and better.
Next year, yeah.
And the very next year and better. And that's the thing, I think. If Toy Story 2 had come out a few years later for the Bug's Life, it's kind of
like ruminate.
This is a very esoteric analogy, but it's like if you're like on Instagram.
Oh,
if you like post a
esoteric indeed.
If you like post a picture, you don't want to post your next picture so soon after because then like people won't give as many likes because they want a certain amount of time. If Toy Story 2 come out maybe 2 or 3 years after this, I think this movie, because it was the newest Pixar movie, it would have cemented more in people's subconscious favor. Like people would have just enjoyed it more, and then Toy Story 2 just would have been the next movie.
Right.
But actually, I'm going to contradict myself for 2 reasons.
Okay.
One, because
Pixar... devil's advocate with yourself.
I'm devil's advocate with myself because I'm trying to get Buzz Life a bone here, but I actually proved myself wrong.
Okay.
Pixar movies at a certain point start coming out 1 year after each other. Consistently anyway, and they still were able to have a thing. So, and also B is about ants. I think it's harder to get behind ants and be like, I want a flick toy. Now that they're grossed out, but it's just like, an ant's not as cute as like
They do a pretty good job making them.
They do the best they can.
Yeah.
But like, I would rather have a Woody toy or a Sully toy, or even a Cars toy, which basically is the bedrock of the Cars franchise of the toys.
Yes.
Than a Flick toy. You know, even if I just see the imagery, not even like, oh, I relate to him more, so I want like that merchandise. Just seeing the imagery, like no one wants, like, subconsciously humans, like, we're afraid of bugs. Yeah. Subconsciously, it's an evolutionary thing. So it's hard to make so it's kind of like we as movie filmmakers can learn this lesson: don't make movies about bugs, because it's going to be harder for the audience to really get into it. What movie about bugs is like, oh, that's such a good movie? The critically acclaimed, like, oh, it's one of my favorite movies. Like, what movie about bugs?
Who's gonna make the obligatory B-movie joke?
Yeah, please don't. No.
Well, but you know, it's
you see my point.
Of course, I see your point. Well, it's funny because when, like, even in which, by the way, if you haven't seen this, it's delightful. The Fleabee reel, which they used to then promote like a Bug's Life, like amongst like the shareholders, like in like 1996, they didn't really have much to show, so they do like almost like a nature documentary, and they like dub over John Lasseter's voice really badly. It's so funny, but they talk about how like, oh, like usually when people think of bugs, they think they're icky and scary and yucky, but our bugs will be beautiful and colorful, and you'll love them, you know. So it's definitely something they had to work against, and you know.
I think at the end of the day, it's
and when you compare it to ants, the ants in ants
Woody Allen
awful.
Woody Allen ant.
And you go, ooh, and have nightmares, and you wake up in a cold sweat and go, good God.
And this isn't a knock against Pixar, because they did everything they could.
Yes.
I just think there's an inherent, like, barrier as, like, it being about bugs that makes it just unable to be, to reach those heights, I think. I think even if it had, like, a better script, or, like, better, you know, if we fix all these other problems, I still think, it would be a movie that you and I would be like, oh, it's so funny, A Bug's Life. But, like, it would never reach that, like, zeitgeist.
No, it's not zeitgeisty. But, like, again, it's just so, like, oh, man. Like I wish I could, you know. But, like, you have to then talk about it in this sense, because I think that then sort of just, like, overshadows, like, the conversation inevitably. Like, why isn't it ranked among, like, you know, the best? But, you know. It's still, I think there is a lot to appreciate, especially in terms of the animation, and like the crowd simulation too is then really well done, because like even though you can say, oh, well, then all the ants, like, you know, look the same, they don't all look exactly the same, and also they can't move in the exact same way. So they need to then sort of then do it in such a way that you're not just looking at it like, oh, well, they just copy and pasted like one ant and then it's it. No, they all then have like sort of then just, which you definitely cannot say for ants.
Yeah.
So, like, that is definitely something. I think also just sort of an interesting undercurrent that I noticed, particularly, like, near the beginning of the film. Like funny that we talked about, like, playing it safe. But, like, playing a bit more into this idea of how, with Toy Story, they sort of, like, went against the grain a little bit with, okay, we're not making it a musical, we're not doing, like, a villain, this or that. There's, like, some, like, subtle, like I don't want to say like deconstructive ideas, but just little like winks like at Disney. Like they name like this really like horrifying grasshopper that doesn't speak. They name him Thumper after the Bambi character.
Yeah,
beloved Bambi sidekick. They turn into this horrifying beast. That's
Thumper.
Interesting. And the other
Isn't
one
there a Dumbo
is,
reference?
There is a Dumbo reference. That's less of like sort of then like, you know, distorting it.
Yeah.
But like you know it is in the circus, like the cookie box. But the other big one is Hopper's like kind of like distortion of the circle of life, when he's like sort of then talking about their arrangement at the end, and he says it's one of those circle of life kind of things. That's really funny.
That's a direct jab.
Yeah. Which like you don't see then very much. I'm trying to think of then like in Zootopia you have the whole thing of like life isn't like a cartoon musical, so let it go. You have that part that BOGO says. That doesn't really often happen. So it's definitely really interesting.
And I would wonder why they were making jabs like that. Mm-hmm. You know, because for all intents and purposes, like,
I think they're loving jabs, but like, you know, because Disney did it to itself later. But
okay, yeah. Because I was gonna say is like Toy Story, like Disney had very little to do with the original Toy Story in terms of the creative production of
the distributor.
But without Disney, the movie wouldn't be made.
Right.
So I would think that there'd be a little bit of like
gratitude
or respect, and so I would maybe think it's loving,
but it's also to help differentiate themselves. I think with their tone, like it's sending a message very very subtly to the audience. Kind of like, yeah, we know we're associated with Disney, but like we're doing our own thing, we're carving our own path. They're the individuals, as it were.
This feels like the most, like we talked about with Toy Story, how it feels different.
Yeah.
I go on and on about how Toy Story feels different, and the tone is really like cool and edgy, and like there's like humor in it that you won't really see anymore because of like the minds behind the script. Right. But at the end of the day, it still feels like a Pixar movie. This one feels like the most un-Pixar movie that I've seen.
Most un-Pixar movie.
Yeah, because the way it's constructed, it's because it doesn't follow. I don't want to say the Pixar tropes, but like it doesn't feel like it's of the same. Like we talk about, if this was made by another studio, it kind of feels like it was made by another studio. It feels not. I don't want to say it feels like kind of follow it. Not made by another studio back then, but like it feels like someone made this now. Okay. Because there were no other really animation studios back then. Yeah. Besides DreamWorks now, I guess. Yeah. But it feels kind of like it could have come out by like Warner's Animation could have made this, or Blues or whatever one of the other.
You see, I definitely I see what you're saying about how it doesn't like follow like the same then sort of just like epic journey sort of narrative. But I do think like I would disagree and say that it does feel very much like a Pixar film, which is then helped along by the Randy Newman score and just kind of like all the little like touches to it. Like there's this one part when near the very end when the circus bugs are trying to rescue Flick from Hopper, and it's an effort in vain, and it almost like directly like called back to in Toy Story when like Slinky tries to then help from the moving van, like get Woody back. It felt like the exact then same sort of moment, and there are a lot of those echoes that I can sort of trace throughout the film. So it feels like like something like Brave, like then doesn't feel like Pixar at all. I would say this and if it didn't feel like a Pixar movie at all, I don't think it would be as interesting of a notion that it doesn't like rise to the same level, because it does feel like Pixar to me, which is why it's all the more strange that it isn't at the same caliber.
Maybe that's a good point. Maybe it's because you saw it so much younger than me. Yeah. Because I'm like a 20-year-old man seeing this for pretty much for the first time, right? So like,
look at you.
I know, right? And so maybe that's why there's like a disconnect, and maybe I'll feel that way with like Brave and Cars 2 and Cars 3, and those are the only ones I haven't seen. I think, yeah, those are the only ones I have not seen.
Cars 3 feels like a Pixar movie.
I'm sure Cars 3, yeah, and I guess maybe I will because that one's like actually that just came out. It's not like it's been in the annals of Pixar history for so long, and like I missed out on it. But let's talk about the performances.
Yeah, let's talk some more.
Because I wouldn't say they're by no means Pixar's best, but I think there's a lot of cool, interesting performances. So we talked about Dave Foley a little, right? Julia Louis-Dreyfus,
who's wonderful, especially in the outtakes.
Oh, and the outtakes is so funny. But I like couldn't unhear Elaine from Seinfeld during some parts, which was actually kind of good because it helped me connect to her a little more. Okay, because I had that like in.
I heard her in this before I ever saw Seinfeld, so I don't have that problem. But,
and then let's just jump to the stage. Let's talk about Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey.
What a good. I wish like he wasn't in this, so that Pixar would use him for something like.
Oh, they could still use
better
him
material.
Again.
I know, but I feel like they try like not use the same voice, and they do some repeat voices that we were talking about in here. But like, they're such small characters.
They use his brother again. Why not use him again? You know.
Yeah. I just Kevin Spacey, especially now with all of his success with House of Cards and now Baby Driver. Right. I feel like it'd be really cool.
Which, funnily enough, he references Monsters Inc. and Baby
Which
Driver.
is really fun. I was like, you referenced the wrong movie. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. But like he really, I think, something that I just sort of realized while talking it out more. He is then sorely missing from the second act of this film, because he lends
except for that one scene. That's really good.
Right. But he lends it so much more in the way of stakes. Like, just like every then sort of way he delivers lines, like, and they never like break that. Like, other than the outtakes, but when we all have a good laugh. But it, like, his presence is truly very intimidating, and it's such a great scene. I think when we first then like introduce him and his gang, they do a really really good job with that, and it sets the bar pretty high for them the rest of the movie. And then they go away for too long. It feels like I don't know exactly how you would fix it. Yeah, but
like I want to know more about this. Like, I dare to call it like a mythology, but like I'm interested to see more of like how this world works. I remember I kept saying to you, wait, where are they supposed to be? Like, so there's like an island. No, that's a fake island. That doesn't count.
So you think they're too isolated? Because like one thing that is interesting is that the grasshoppers bring up this whole idea of like, oh well, then we need to protect you. But like other than that bird, what's like coming after them? You know.
And I think this goes back to it doesn't. You know what it is? It does. I don't think it has to be humans.
Yeah.
I think what it has to be is seeing, and I guess maybe by extension it does mean it has to be humans, but it's about seeing these characters interact with a world that we're familiar, that they don't know and that we're familiar with.
And we know, yeah.
Right. So in Toy Story, like seeing them like exist in our world, Monsters Inc., seeing them deal with a Boo. Like this is very. I don't mean just the ants in relationship to the grasshoppers, but the whole story feels really isolated.
Correct.
And because that's the fun of Toy Story, because the whole notion is that like it's things that exist in our world, and we're like, what's going on actually?
And it holds up a mirror to our world.
It holds up a mirror to our world. Ants exist in our world, but I mean, like this movie doesn't really ask these questions about what it's really like to be an ant. It's more just like this is a story about some ants, not so much what is it like to be an ant. The most they ever get into that
interesting.
The most they ever get into that is more for gags.
Right.
You know, like with like the line and the leaf falls and like I don't know what to do. Those are more played for laughs.
Yeah,
but I would hesitate to call them like deep, questions.
Right.
Now, not to say that these movies need to always be really super deep and like answer these like big tough questions, but unfortunately.
But if it wasn't doing that, then it's sort of committed entirely to being a comedy,
which it doesn't. Yeah.
Which I don't think any Pixar movie sets out to do.
And this movie's funny. Like I said before, it's funny, but it's not like remarkably funny. Like I don't remember any part where I was like, that was like a really funny scene. Like I can't think of anything where that was like iconic. Maybe because I didn't grow up with it. Maybe.
Well, what's interesting is that, of course, John Ratzenberger. This then I guess starts.
Ratzenberger or Ratzenberger?
Ratzenberger.
Oh, it's Burger.
John Ratzenberger.
Oh, really? Oh.
John Ratzenberger. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just Berg. He's a burger? Forget it. Never mind.
No, I tricked you. It's John Ratzenberger.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it, you mother Hubbard. Okay, continue.
I wanted to fool you on the show.
No.
But yeah. So John Ratzenberger, he's been in all the Pixar movies since. Of course, they refer to him as the good luck charm, as it were.
Well, I don't know if that always worked, but...
but you like up for debate, of course. But... like this is then the first time then he's then like used again like after like he could have just been like Ham and then that would have been it. He has said that this is his favorite role that he's played.
I quite like that bug. I will say I do like his character a lot.
You do? Because you were getting really angry at him.
I was angry, but I mean, if anything, that's actually a compliment to the film because I was getting angry at him as if I was a character. Because like Darth Vader, we love watching, and in a way, when you watch like a Star Wars movie, you kind of like get a little excitement when he succeeds at something, like when he chokes out someone, you know what I mean? But like, there's a distance. If I existed in Star Wars, I'd be terrified of Darth Vader.
Correct.
In this, I was getting so I guess invested at least in some of the story elements that when he would do something that would mess it up, I was like, no, don't do that, right?
Right.
Maybe it was because I just wanted the movie to be over, and it was. Oh well. But all kidding aside.
Which, by the way, I tricked you again. It is John Ratzenberger. And you're a loser.
No, it's not. It's totally John Ratzenberger.
Let's look it up after the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to look it up. And on the next episode, I will tell you if I was right or wrong.
Jeez. So, but yeah, it is like, I think he then has a lot of the best lines.
Him or Kevin Spacey, probably the best characters.
Slim is really good too.
Slim, I really like Slim.
Yeah, which they have this great scene when then it's like he's then talking about like, oh, they don't take me seriously. He goes, that's because you're a clown. It's very funny. He has some really, like, some of his best line reads in the entire Pixar canon, which is saying something. But yeah, so then those were then, I guess, then the standouts. Oh, we have to mention Joe Ranft as Heimlich. Because it was really then sort of interesting what happened. Like, he would do the voice and the storyboards, and this became, like, a huge tradition with Pixar. Well, not to say tradition, because it would just happen on a case-by-case basis, but if they couldn't find someone that was funnier than, like, whoever did it when they pitched it, they would just use that. Because they tried to get someone else to be Heimlich, but they weren't landing the laughs.
Do you know who it was, or was it just like some?
They didn't say who it was, but they said how I think John Lasseter brought reels of the movie home, and then they had recorded half of Heimlich's lines, and the other were still by Ranft, and she would laugh every time Ranft said something, but not the other.
Who's she? Like his wife?
His wife.
Okay.
Nancy Lasseter. Yeah. Which, yeah, so then that's when he realized, okay, we gotta just... Joe, you got the part. So
Yeah. He did a super good job. Kind of
hilarious.
like, I don't think he's the funniest character in the movie. I still think John Ratzenberger is funnier.
But just that voice is inherently hilarious.
Like, I can just imagine in, like, those story meetings of him, like, just going up there and going, like, oh, no, with, like, this big, you know, presence. Because if you've ever seen Joe Rant, he was, like, a big guy. He was just like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Right? He's another one of those Disney people who, like, such a shame that they let him get away, but good for us. You know, that he went on and did Pixar stuff.
Right.
He did super well. So, how do you think this film compares to Toy Story? And we've kind of touched on it.
Compares to Toy Story.
You know, like, what do you think this... Actually, I think a better question is, what do you think this movie does better than Toy Story?
What it does better than Toy Story?
Because we've already talked about, basically, I think, this whole review has been, like, what Toy Story does better. And what other Pixar movies are right.
No, we like, it's owed this. And I think we definitely then got into, like I don't want to just stick to a technical level, because it does, like, aspire to, like, a higher sense of scale, and it really does exceed in that. But then I'm trying to think, then, what exactly... In what ways does it surpass Toy Story on a story level? Ooh, I'm trying to think.
I don't know. It may not. You know.
I do. Well, I mean, it's a hard question, because like
I don't think the answer is yes. I think that's why it's hard.
Okay. Well,
I think the only things that make it better are its sense of scale, and the technology got a little better. But I don't see anything. Just story level.
You could say it's their first true antagonist. You could say that. Which
they don't do that.
They don't use it as much as they could, but it's more of a direct sense of conflict than Sid could provide in the first Toy Story.
Do you want to know? I'm curious. Do you want to know why they probably don't have a direct antagonist in Toy Story, except for like maybe Sid?
Why?
Which doesn't really count. He's more.
I think I know what you're going to say, but why?
Well, because they're coming from a shorts background.
And
in shorts, you really don't have like antagonists. They're more just like in shorts, particularly like non-verbal, basically for all intents and purposes, physical comedies.
Right.
The antagonist is just like their bad luck, or just like or whatever the physical conflict is. Like there's usually not like an antagonist.
Wow.
Like, who's the antagonist of Luxo Jr.? There really isn't none. Tintoy.
The baby, sort of.
But that's kind of more of like a force.
In Jerry's game, it's Jerry.
It's Jerry. In the what's Knick-Knack?
Knick-Knack, yeah.
It's so I wouldn't be surprised if that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of the growing pains.
Very interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I thought you were going to say was just the antagonistic forces inherently, and I'm a toy, and it's this big crazy world.
Well, that's part of it, and I think that's the way they think. But it's weird though how so they do this and kind of dip their toes in it, and then they go full on out with. But not even. I was going to say with Toy Story 2, but they don't really reveal his antagonist till the end. So they're still like kind of afraid to
really then went for it. You think? What's the first?
I'm trying to think of what's a Pixar movie where the antagonist is clear from the beginning. It's a clear antagonist, so it's not like Sid, where it's like just like kind of more of a force, and it's right from the beginning. Because Monsters Inc. it's more like you think it's Randall, but it's really going to be Water News. In Finding Nemo, it's more of a force. There's not really antagonist. Incredibles Syndrome's not revealed
you don't know,
right?
Yeah, of course.
Like Darth Vader, in the first 5 seconds of the movie, he's the bad guy.
I mean, like,
right? Isn't this? I've never noticed this before. Ratatouille,
Skinner and Ratatouille, sort of. I that's the closest I have to one so far. I'm running through them all in my head.
Wally, it's more of a force.
It's Otto ultimately, but like it doesn't. Yeah, that takes a while.
So villain revealed
takes a very long time.
Wow, they really do the villain revealed.
Yeah.
Plot line, which isn't bad, but I just never realized it until like right now.
So I guess, Hopper might be like, at least in terms of like how early they enter the film,
the most clear antagonist that Pixar
might be.
Had.
Wow,
in terms of like
that went around in a circle, didn't it?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And there's stronger antagonists in these, like Lotso, Stinky Pete. Like they're Mr. Water News.
Lotso is arguably the best.
But they're better villains.
Really good. Yeah.
My point being that like this is the most like.
Right.
Like they're not playing that trope, like you just know from the beginning, and they have to deal with the conflict. Whereas in most of the movies, it's because you're dealing with these existential things. So the conflict for most of the movie is about that.
Yeah.
And then when you can't have a climax with an existential crisis, so then they have to like externalize it with a person.
Right.
So it's like, okay, when it's convenient, now we'll have an antagonist.
Yes. Which is something Disney is sort of doing a lot now too.
Disney's doing a lot with Frozen and Zootopia.
Potentially, sometimes lesser success. Sometimes
the Frozen is a big. The Frozen is like the biggest cheat of all time because they really take that to like new heights where they're like, here's a character and we're gonna do everything to the point where the movie's almost like lying to you about him being a good guy.
We have that infamous shot of Hans just smiling where
where no one would be around him.
Yeah, right,
so why is he smiling? It's the movie trying to really trick you.
Yes,
that's the cheapest one. Zootopia's is okay, but I remember being in the theater being like, okay, I guess, sure.
It fits perfectly thematically, but like no one would ever like leave going like, oh yeah, one of like the best Disney antagonists.
Twists, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe back to this. So I guess Hopper is the most. I'm not necessarily most anything, just the only one that's like from the beginning.
From the beginning. Yeah, I guess so. Jeez.
That's weird. See, we discovered new stuff here.
That is really interesting. Yeah. Is there anything else that you think it does better than Toy Story?
I don't think so. And that's not necessarily a bad. Like it's okay to get a B on a test. It's just that Toy Story got an A. Mm-hmm. It's okay to get a B. Mm-hmm. But I think in a class of A's and A pluses, a B or a B minus or a C is just not gonna cut it. Yeah, I guess, and I guess that's why.
I guess so.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of if there's anything else, because there's really not too much to talk about with this movie. There's not too much to really discuss.
Sink our teeth into.
Yeah, to sink your teeth into, really.
To use your phrase from earlier.
So I guess something we should do going forward, and maybe we should try to keep a list of so let's try to. I think we both know our answer.
Okay.
Try to rank them as we go. All right. Right. So put them into place. So for me, number 1 is Toy Story and this is number 2.
Okay.
Because these are the only 2 movies that have ever come out by Pixar. For all intents and purposes.
Goes, yeah. I would like a Bug's Life at the bottom, then Toy Story, and then Red's Dream, a classic Pixar short film.
Okay.
No, I'm just joshing.
He's just joshing around. Brian's name is not Josh. He's just Brian.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yes, I was just joshing around when I suggested that my name was Josh.
Yeah.
Just to clarify. But yeah, no, I think
Toy Story just succeeds on you couldn't make a Bug's Life 2. I don't think anyone would care to see a Bug's Life 2.
It's not a Bug's Life 2. I'm sorry. What is it then? to quote the Toy Story 2 outtakes.
Yeah.
Which it is. Yeah. It is.
I mean, if they made a sequel, I would want. If they made a sequel, I would want it to be A Bug's Wife, where it's about them getting married.
And I would want you to fail and not get to make that movie. But I would. Wow, would I be curious to see what they would do if they were to make a fall? How would you make a sequel?
Let's end this discussion with this. Is there room, the way the story ends? Is there room for a sequel? A, and B. Do you think in like a million years would Pixar ever revisit this source material?
Well, first I'm just counting my fingers right now. Okay, so out of Pixar's first 7 films, and I'm counting like Toy Story and Toy Story 2 are like also in there. Like all the other ones have gotten sequels or are getting sequels.
Out of that original run, and we'll say original run goes from what, Toy Story to Cars.
Yes, that's what.
Because that's like the pre-Disney buyout kind of, so it's a little different. Okay,
so we have all of them those. So with A Bug's Life, I mean, I guess
it's the only one not to get some kind of either it's come out or it's going to come out some kind of follow up.
Not even a short. Not even a short with the characters. We've really then like the last time we've seen them, and it's really then kind of like this is then a morbid way to sort of reflect their place in history. The last time we see like Flick and Heimlich is Buzz going
in the Toy Story 2 outtakes.
And they just disappear
in the Toy Story 2
in the Toy Story 2 outtakes. Yeah, so I mean I guess then I guess an obvious thing to then propose is introducing humans in some way, because I guess that's what we have to do in order to lend it like a greater sense of stakes. Like see how then Otta, like now Otta's taking over as queen. Lean into that.
Yeah, what's the antagonistic force? Just humans?
I don't know. Is it like we have to then broaden the scope of the story in some way, because it is interesting when we were talking about then, like even though we're talking about like human interference. There's also then this whole idea of how Pixar will create these parallel worlds. Like in Monsters, Inc., we have Monstropolis, and how that does pull the mirror up to our world in a way. But with it, we have Bug City briefly in this. But
like way too short. I wish we spent more time in Bug City.
Gags. So we need then more of the sense of like broader culture and society.
The world building
of the insect world. Yes. So we need more of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be humans. I hate to then just say that, but that's just me like ripping off of everything else they've done. So yeah, like bring in humans in some way, maybe. Lean more into the culture, lean more into the sense of responsibility of their society. Like maybe they have a hard time being self-sufficient. Maybe they need to like establish then like a government, as it were. Maybe they need to
they overthrow the monarchy.
Yeah. And
establish a constitutional democracy.
I don't know. Maybe.
Why not?
Why not?
I mean, because where else do you really go?
Yeah.
I think the answer is that there's just they'll never make it one. They will never touch the source material again. The closest we'll ever see is the bug. What's it called in Animal Kingdom where they stab you?
It's tough to be a bug where they stab you, where they kill you.
Where if you
if you're thinking, oh, I want to see more Bug's Life material, you're dead because they got rid of you all. They stab you.
Well, no, I think so. If you don't know, I'm sure most of you know. There's I hesitate to call it a show. It's more of a torture experience.
A torture chamber. No, in Disneyland, they have a bugged land. They have a whole theme.
In Walt Disney World in Florida, in Animal Kingdom, they have like a theater show, like a 4D show, which was all the rage, I guess, when they made this.
In the Tree of Life.
In the
icon of the park.
In the beautiful Tree of Life, there is a show which is. I honestly don't remember the plot because I repressed it, and I went out a year ago. I've like repressed all my like memories of it. It's like the plot's like they're just putting on a show, like thank you human. You see the humans come to the bug world.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
I guess in a way it's almost sort of like Your Friend the Rat, which is the Ratatouille short, in that it's these characters trying to tell the humans this is what it's like to be.
And like bugs aren't so bad.
Bugs aren't so bad.
But in an attempt to tell us that, you know what happens in 4D magic, they fart. So you smell it. They run past your ankles at the end. So if you feel them on your ankles to go by, and then I guess I don't know what bugs they are, but at one point they actually like there's little like spikes in your chair in the back that actually like sting you, like stab you during the show, during the movie. Yeah. Like they're doing this like 15-minute thing. So maybe the reason why is that they're like, we don't want to make any more bug movies, so we're just gonna make everyone traumatize people, so they associate like Pavlovian style, traumatize.
And they
people.
Still keep it open,
and they keep
want
it.
To make sure.
Of all the rides at Disney or attractions, what have you, like even Stitch's Great Escape has like has some kind of like cool conceit. I think this is just purely literally like if you want to see a 4D show, there's like 8 other 4D shows like that at Disneyland or Disney World or wherever. Like. Get rid of this. Put anything else. Put the Avatar stuff in the Tree of Life.
But we got rid of our other horrifying 4D show, which was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. So we need to keep this one, at least. Because something has to scare the kids.
We need something. But it's not even scary. It's just, like, uncomfortable and painful. Like, I was actually in pain. I think I almost yelled the F word. I went, oh, mother! And I, like, caught myself because I was with kids. But I was, like, so angry, too. It was a hot day. But anyway...
Is it really it's tough to be a bug, or is it's tough to be a bug's life?
It's tough to be...
Among these titans of classic
It's tough to be
films.
a Disney park attendee sitting through that god-awful attraction. Mm-hmm. But anyway...
Yeah.
I think that's all we have to say about The Bug's Life.
The Bug's Life.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Yes.
Our next episode will be about the best Toy Story movie.
Oh,
I'm already saying
it.
I'm saying that.
Well, definitely better than Toy Story.
Definitely better than Toy Story.
I don't care what you say.
And Pixar's defining moment.
Yeah.
The Toy Story 2.
The Toy Story.
Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.